English literature, prescribed short story by Jhumpa Lahiri. Today we discuss major questions based on this short story. We know that the short story is different from a novel. The novel discusses many characters, many events, situations, and some settings. But in a short story, is limited. It is short and brief, but it should have some situation or character or one incident. That is the difference between the short story and a novel. Jhumpa Lahiri has written both novels and short stories. But today, now we discuss very significant questions about this short stories she wrote. His Interpreter of Melodies by Jhumpa Lahiri discusses the current universal problem available in mixed cultures. Now, these questions is centralized with the major theme of the story. The short story is about sad and empty lives of Asians who live in the Americans' land and culture. The first and second generation do not know which country they belong to. They practice mixed social and cultural values. It also brings out their life based in a new environment. Their sexual relations, language, rituals, and religions create problems among them. We got to see a series of crumbling lifestyles and also another story of a member who lives in their homeland, India. It is a struggle between two worlds. They are not satisfied with their life. They feel alienated. The writer looks at the miserable life with a mixture of humor and sympathy. A young couple named Mr. and Mrs. Das from the United States are going on a tour of India with their 3 children. When they enjoy the surroundings, the car driver, Mr. Kapasi, acts as a tour guide and shares the experience with them. At the beginning of the story, the writer shows the reader the problem of the story: alienation and futility. Alienation means the remoteness, otherness. Mr. and Mrs. Das appear to be a young and newly married couple, and they also have 3 children, Tina, Bobby, and Ronnie. Although they go on a tour, they don't seem happy. They don't care about each other. They argue over who should take Tina to the bathroom. It is clear that they are not in harmony, and this is where the writer gives us an idea of the theme and the character along with the other elements like the setting and the plot. They seem to be brothers and sisters to their children. They are not serious in the management of their children. Children don't seem to obey their parents. During their tour, Mrs. Das buys some stir-fried rice, but she does not share it with others and keeps it with her bag. They only communicate with each other on certain common things. There is another part of the story. This is Mr. Kapasi, the driver of the vehicle, who says he's doing 2 jobs. One is tourist guide and the other is to interpret the complaints of patients to the doctor. When he told the couple about his work as an interpreter, Miss Das was interested in his new job as an interpreter. She finds him romantic. This comment leads to a fantasy for Mr. Kapasi. He begins to dream of some kind of interest in Mrs. Das. She also continues to tell him about her own family issues. She reveals to Mr. Kapasi a secret story about Bobby, whose father is not Mr. Das, but that of his friends who took the opportunity to get her pregnant. After that, Mr. Kapasi is surprised at her and questions her to understand her current situation, but she seems to be inactive in finding a solution to her secret life. In the end, Mr. Kapasi, who realizes that his fantasy becomes futile. Mr. Das is presented as a character still buried in his guide, while Miss Das hides behind her sunglasses. Mr. Kapasi is trapped in a futile, loveless marriage, spending lonely night drinking tea on his own. Mrs. Das does not offer pub rice to other family members that she had herself. This action by Mrs. Das indicates indifference and as underlying sense of hostility towards her spouse and children. The relationship they share are therefore understood to be in vain. Thus, the writer Jhumpa Lahiri wants to convince the reader that those who give up living in their country of origin and start living abroad will suffer from futility and alienation, and that they are not satisfied with what they would have. This vision is presented by the writer through a combination of humor and sympathy, which is why it has universal value. Nowadays, society also suffers from the same problem and they become victims of alienation and futility.